season replays, fantasy drafts, ultimate created leagues, and what if tournaments. It's Coffee Cup Games with the coach, DKM. And now, Game 2 versus the number 8 New York Giants and the host of the number 1 Brooklyn Superbas. Brooklyn leads the series 1-0. For the New York Giants, they're going to be having to start Win Mercer, the right-hander. He was slated to start Game 3, but Bill Carrick, the original Game 2 starter, gave 2 innings of relief in the Game 1 matchup. Win Mercer is 14-16 this year. He had 2 saves. He had a 4.95 ERA. Started 32 games, had only 27 strikeouts while issuing 58 walks. For Brooklyn, we have Brickyard Kennedy, the right-hander. He was a 20-game winner going 20-17. He did have 5 saves. He had a 4.03 ERA. He started 34 games for the Superbas. He had 66 walks, and unfortunately, he did walk 102 batters. In today's first game of the National League, the Brooklyn Superbas beat the New York Giants 7-2. New York jumped up early in the top of the first with 2 runs, but Brooklyn fought back, scoring 4 runs in the decisive 4th inning, and then adding 2 more in the 8th to win the game 7-2. Brickyard Kennedy got the win, pitching 8 innings and allowing only 7 hits. The second game from today's lineup in the National League will be the number 5 Chicago Orphans against the number 4 Pittsburgh Pirates. Chicago won the first game on the road and now lead the series 1-0. And on the mounds today, what is expected to be an incredible pitching duel between 2 Hall of Fame pitchers. We have right-hander Clark Griffith for Chicago. He went 14-14. He had 0 saves. He had a 3.88 ERA. He started 37 games, struck out 41 while walking 43. And for the Pirates will be southpaw Rude Waddell. He went 14-9. He had 3 saves. He had a 3.20 ERA. He started 24 games. He had a whopping and one of the league best 105 strikeouts while walking only 69. Chicago and Pittsburgh, the Orphans and the Pirates. This might be the series of the entire first round playoffs. In Game 1, Chicago came in to Pittsburgh and won. So they're leading the series 1-0. And it looked like they might win Game 2. I thought the game was going to be all about the pitchers. Chicago's ace Clark Griffith, Hall of Famer, and Pittsburgh's Rude Waddell, Hall of Famer. And both pitchers lived up to the hype. Clark Griffith went 8 innings, allowed only 4 hits, while Rude Waddell, he went 8 innings and struck out 7. But the entire game was defined by untimely errors, horrible relief pitching, and a late comeback. Chicago jumped up 3-0 in the first few innings because of some bad errors by Pittsburgh fielders. Pittsburgh got a run in the 4th, making it 3-1. We go into the 9th inning. Both Clark Griffith and Rude Waddell were pulled by the managers for relief pitchers. For Pittsburgh, in the top of the 9th, they brought in Deacon Philippe. Deacon Philippe gave up a run, making it 4-1, and it looked very, very bleak for Pittsburgh. But for Chicago, they brought in Jack Menifee. Jock Menifee was horrible. Pittsburgh jumped all over him. After struggling to get hits the entire game, they just unloaded. With 1 out, they got the bases loaded, got a run, got another one, and now the score is 4-3, and Pittsburgh brings in Tommy Leach to pinch hit for the pitcher. Bases loaded, 1 out, down 4-3, and Tommy Leach rips a single to left field. It scores 1 run easy. We send the runner for Pittsburgh, and he's safe. And Pittsburgh ends up winning the game 5-4. An instant classic. I wish we would have videotaped it. Game number 3 will be between the number 6 Philadelphia Phillies and the home team, the number 3 St. Louis Cardinals, who won the first game behind Cy Young's great pitching and lead the series 1-0. And on the mound for Philadelphia, there is a surprise. Jack Dunn will be starting. Red Donahue and Chick Frazier, the Game 2 and Game 3 projected starters, both pitched relief and are not ready to go. So Jack Dunn is going to get the start. He is 8-9. He has 2 saves. He had a very impressive 3.07 ERA. He only started 15 games. He had 30 strikeouts while issuing 45 walks. For St. Louis, they have their originally projected Game 2 starter, and that's Cowboy Jones. He went 15-19. He had 3 saves. He had a 4.18 ERA. He started 35 games, struck out 60, and walked 65. St. Louis was up in the series 1-0. But Game 2 looked like this was going to be an easy win for Philadelphia as they jumped up 5-0 after 3 innings. They did so on 8 hits, 6 of which were extra bases. It looked like a blowout until the bottom of the 6th when St. Louis suddenly got 3 runs. In the 7th, they added 1 more, bringing the score to 5-4. Then we get to the bottom of the 9th. St. Louis has runners on first and third with their Hall of Fame third baseman and their leadoff man, John McGraw, at the plate. The Phillies had Chick Frazier, who had come in on relief. And the outcome? Chick Frazier struck out John McGraw. And that ended the game and all hopes of St. Louis with an epic comeback. And the last game of the day will be between the number 7 Cincinnati Red Stockings against the number 2 Boston Beaners. Boston's trying to bounce back from the devastating Game 1 loss to Cincinnati. And on the mound for Cincinnati will be right-hander Bill Phillips. Cincinnati has 5 starters that they could choose from, and today they decided to give the ball to Phillips. He went 12-14. He had 7 saves, a 4.04 ERA. He started 22 games during the regular season. He struck out 49 and walked 74. For Boston, they will be going with Hall of Famer Kid Nichols, the right-hander. Kid Nichols went 13-11 during the regular season. He had 0 saves. He had a very respectable 3.76 ERA. He started 34 games, struck out 46, and walked 67. The last day of the game was between Cincinnati, the number 7 seed, and Boston, the number 2 seed. Boston desperately wanted to address their debacle of an upset yesterday when Cincinnati came in and took Game 1. Unfortunately for Boston, Cincinnati had something else on their mind. Cincinnati scored 2 runs in the 5th and 3 runs in the top of the 7th to lead 5-0. This also was because of Bill Phillips, the pitcher, who pitched 8 1/3 innings, allowed only 5 hits, and didn't allow any earned runs. Boston did get a single run in the 8th and then added a run in the 9th, but it was too little too late as Cincinnati upset Boston again. And with that, that concludes all of the Game 2s for the first round. Let's just do a quick recap. Chicago Invaders won 12-1 over the Minneapolis Millers, and so the number 1 seed in the American League, the Chicago Invaders, are leading the series 2-0. Detroit bounced back after the first game to win 4-1 against Milwaukee, so now that series is tied 1-1. The Cleveland Babes, who won Game 1, were upset by number 6 Kansas City Blues, who won 9-7, tying the series 1-1. And in the last series of the day in the American League, the Hoosiers, number 2, responded after their debacle in Game 1 to win 5-2 and now tying the series. So as you can tell, all the series are tied except for Chicago, the number 1 seed, versus number 8 Minneapolis. In the National League, Brooklyn, the number 1 seed, just like the American League, won their second game to lead the series 2-0. Brooklyn won 7-2 against the New York Giants. In the other upper half game, Pittsburgh Pirates responded to their loss yesterday by winning 5-4 in a classic game. St. Louis, who won the game yesterday, lost to the number 6 Philadelphia Phillies 5-4. And in the last game, the surprise of the entire playoffs is that Cincinnati, who somehow beat Boston in game 1, did it again in game 2. Boston's hitters numbers 2, 3, 4, and 5 just have not been able to hit. So Cincinnati continues to confuse the Boston hitters, including some Hall of Famers, and now Cincinnati leads that series 2-0. And now we get ready for all of the game 3s. So the higher, or would it be the lower, or I don't know, the better team will be on the road. So Cleveland will be traveling to Minneapolis. And the other day game will be Indianapolis traveling to Buffalo. So the 1 and 2s will be on the road during the day, playing against the 8 and 7s respectively. At nighttime, we will have Cleveland, who will be traveling to Kansas City, and Detroit, who will be traveling to Milwaukee. And in the National League, we will have Brooklyn traveling to New York, and Boston, who's down 2-0 to Cincinnati. They'll be going to Cincinnati. At nighttime, we will have St. Louis, who will be going to Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh, who will be going to Chicago. Now, before we go check out the games, I'm going to ask you, which I have to do, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. Always appreciate the feedback and a little bit of love. And our first game 3 will be the afternoon game between the number 1 Chicago Invaders and the number 8 Minneapolis Millers. Chicago leads 2-0, so the Millers need to win at home to have any chance of staying alive in the playoffs. And on the mound for the Chicago Invaders will be right-hander Roger Denzer. He went 15-11, had 2 saves, had an amazing 1.62 ERA. He started 34 games, struck out 54, and walked only 46. Minneapolis is going to have its hands full, and they're going to send Doc Parker, the right-hander. He went 12-10. He had 4 saves. He had a very, very respectful 2.64 ERA. He started 27 games, struck out 52, and issued 62 bases on balls. Trailing 2-0, Minneapolis desperately needed to go back home. And going back home looked to be able to help them. Once they got down 4-1 at the top after the top of the third, highlighted by Chicago's Frank Sugar, who hit his 2nd home run of the postseason, the Millers responded in the bottom half of the third with 3 runs tying the game. They added another run in the bottom of the 4th, and then after both teams each got a run in the 5th, the score was 6-5. All of a sudden, we get to the 7th inning, and the Millers added another run, and the 8th, 1 more, making the score 8-5. So now the Millers have gotten the series closer with a 2-1 deficit. What was most impressive about this game was Minneapolis' hitters. Every starter except for the pitcher got a hit, and every starter except for the pitcher had at least 1 run or an RBI. It was definitely a team effort as the team got 13 hits in the game. For our second game of the series, we have the number 2 Indianapolis Hoosiers traveling to Buffalo Bulls, the number 7 seed. The series is knotted at 1 apiece. On the mound for Indianapolis, they have right-hander Jim Gardner. He went 9-5 during the regular season. He led the team with 9 saves and was one of the best relievers in all of the majors, especially with his 2.01 ERA. He did start 14 games. He did have 55 strikeouts, and he did walk 62. So the Hoosiers are going to go with one of their best pitchers, even though he may not be one of their top starters. For Buffalo, on the other hand, they're going with one of their starters, right-hander Charlie Hastings. He went 12-14 during the regular season. He did have 3 saves. He had a very impressive 2.85 ERA. He started 24 games, struck out 42, and walked 65. Cleveland and Kansas City, Game 3. Series was tied 1-1, and now the series went to Kansas City. Kansas City jumped on early, and it looked like this game was pretty much going to be a huge blowout. Kansas City jumped up 6-1 after 3 innings, added 8 more runs to Cleveland's 2. So at the end of 6, it was 14-3. In the 8th inning, each team added a few runs, so we enter the 9th inning where the score is 17-5. Some of the Kansas City fans were leaving, but they missed what almost was one of the best comebacks of all time. Cleveland jumped on the Kansas City relief pitchers. They scored 7 runs, had the bases loaded with 2 outs, and had a chance to keep going, but finally Kansas City put Cleveland out of their misery as the game ended 17-12. Now Kansas City leads the series 2-1. The number 6 seed is leading their series 2-1. Game 3 of Detroit-Milwaukee was a great game. Detroit jumped up early in the top of the first with 2 runs. Milwaukee was quite frustrated in the early innings, as for the first 3 innings they had a runner on third base but could not get him to score. In the middle innings, both Detroit and Milwaukee added a run, making it 3-1. And then in the bottom of the 9th, Milwaukee had runners on second and third with 2 outs, and Fultz, their great hitter, hit a triple, knocking in both runs. Fultz couldn't score, so the game went into extra innings. The 10th and the 11th inning saw no runs, but in the top of the 12th, Detroit scored 5 runs. There was no comeback from Milwaukee this time, as the game ended 8-5. And now Detroit, the number 4 seed, leads the series 2-1. And in the American League playoffs, all the Game 3s have now been concluded. So let's take a look at where everybody stands. Chicago still holds on to a 2-1 lead in the series, even though they lost to Minneapolis 8-5. Detroit won 8-5 on the road, so now they lead the series 2-1. So in the top half of the bracket, the better or lower seed is leading the series. On the bottom half, it's the opposite. Cleveland Babes lost the number 3 seed to the number 6 seed, Kansas City. So now Kansas City, the 6th seed, the worst seed. I don't know if it's higher or lower. You figure it out. The lower, worst, whatever you want to call it, seed, Kansas City leads 2-1. And then the real shock is that Buffalo, the number 7 seed, won at home 6-5. So now Buffalo leads the series 2-1 over the second seeded team, the Indianapolis Hoosiers. But we're not done yet. The National League playoff Game 3s have not started yet. We're about to do those next. And let's take a quick recap. Brooklyn is leading the series 2-0. Pittsburgh and Chicago are tied 1 apiece. St. Louis and Philadelphia are tied 1 apiece. And then the real shocker, Cincinnati Red Stockings, the number 7 seed, are leading the series 2-0 against the number 2 Boston Bean Eaters. And now the series goes to Cincinnati for 3 games. So here's how we're going to be doing it. We're going to be doing Brooklyn and New York first. And then we will be doing the real big one that everybody wants to see, Boston and Cincinnati. Those 2 games will be during the day. At night, we will have St. Louis traveling to Philadelphia. And then we will have Pittsburgh traveling to Chicago at night. So the daytime games has a 2-0 leader. And then the night games, the series are tied 1-1. On the mounds, we have a pretty decent matchup here for Brooklyn. We're going to have the right-hander Frank Kitson. He had a pretty good season at 18-8. He also accumulated 7 saves, had a very respectable 3.17 ERA. He started 27 games, struck out 44, and walked 63. For the Giants, they're going to go with their Game 1 starter, who only lasted 2 innings in that game. Gave up a ton of runs. You can see his ERA after that game was a 19.29. Like I said, he pitched 2 innings, did not strike out anybody. He gave up 8 hits and walked 3 as he got the loss. During the regular season, though, he was pretty good. He went 19-16, did get a save. He had a respectful 3.43 ERA. 42 games started as he was their number one starter. He walked 61 struck out 61 and walked 98. So interesting start here, going with the game one starter all the way quickly in game 3. But the Giants are hoping to get a win early in the home stunt that they are going to do. And so they're going to go with Pincoli, hoping that they might be able to bounce back and get the series at 2-1. So now let's check out the action and the highlights and the recap of the game. In Game 3, New York jumped up 1-0 in the second inning, and Pincoli looked really, really good, making up for his last start. But then came the sixth inning when Brooklyn scored 3 runs and then followed up in the eighth with another 3 runs, having a 6-1 lead. But New York decided to answer back. They scored 4 runs in the bottom of the eighth, bringing the score to 6-5. Enter the ninth. Christy Mathewson comes in for New York, the old geezer, the old captain, and he pitches very well, but unfortunately 2 runs were scored by Brooklyn, neither of which were earned. So it was 8-5, and then New York Giants mounted another comeback. They got 1 run. They got a guy on second base, George Davis, the Hall of Famer's up. He hits a single, and the score is 8-7. George Davis on first, 2 outs. George Davis steals, and he gets pegged to end the game. So New York ends up losing 8-7 as Brooklyn now holds a 3-0 series lead. And now for Game 3 between the number 2 Boston Beaneaters versus the number 7 Cincinnati Red Stockings. Boston lost both of their home games to fall behind Cincinnati 2-0. Now 3 games will be held at Cincinnati, so the Red Stockings have a chance to clinch the series, pulling a massive upset. All right, and for the Game 3 starters, Boston probably wishes it was Game 2 again. But for the Game 3 starters, Boston has Game 1 starter, the right-hander Bill Dineen. He's fresh because he only lasted 3 innings. He did get the loss in the start. He gave up 6 runs, giving him an 18 even ERA. He, like I said, went 3 innings. He gave up 7 hits, a walk. I guess the best thing about it is that he got 2 strikeouts in 3 innings worth of work. So I guess that's a good thing. During the regular season, he went 22-15. He had 2 saves. He had a 3.34 ERA. Started 37 games, so he was their most regular starter. He walked 90 and struck out 76. For Cincinnati, right-hander Ted Breitenstein is going to be starting. It's his first appearance in the playoffs. He went 14-13. He had 0 saves. He had a 4.32 ERA. He did start 25 games. He walked 77 while only striking out 27 batters. Just as a reminder, whenever I do a replay, an actual game, I let the away team be completely managed by Super How, the computer manager. Those of you who may not know what Super How is, it's the computer manager. And so I'm surprised that they went with Bill Dineen. They have really good pitchers. You saw Kid Nichols the last game. They have Nick Cuppy, who did really well, and then they have a Hall of Famer, Vic Willis. So they do have a good pitching staff. Surprised that they went with Bill Dineen, but he was their most regular starter. So I guess knowing that he's fresh, the computer manager decided to go with him. I choose the home team since I'm going to be managing them, and I decided to go with Ted Breitenstein. So let's see what happened in the game. Well, Game 3 looked like it was going to be a repeat of Games 1 and 2. Cincinnati fans were excited in the beginning of the game. Boston did jump up with a quick 2 runs in the top of the second, but Cincinnati immediately responded with 3 runs of their own, and then Ted Breitenstein just put the clamps on the Boston hitters for most of the game. But not all of the game. As they got to the top of the seventh inning, all of a sudden, Boston bats just came alive, and the remainder of the game, Boston just was crushing the ball. Boston ended up getting 3 runs in the seventh, 3 runs in the eighth, and 3 runs in the ninth. Cincinnati, they just had no answer to be able to respond to it. So so at the end of the day, Boston ended up winning 11-3, closing the series now, only trailing by 1 game. Needed desperately a win here, but the player of the games might have been Bill Dineen. He started in game 1, and it was absolutely treacherous. And so he came in today wanting to revive himself. And so he pitched 9 innings, a complete game. He only gave up 7 hits. He did allow 3 earned runs, but they were all in 1 inning in the second. After that, he was pretty good. He struck out 3 guys. And the other one that was finally came alive was Sullivan for Boston. He was like 0 for 13 or something like that in the series. And all of a sudden, his last 2 at-bats, he had a single for 2 RBIs, and then he had a base-clearing double. So he ended up with 5 RBIs in the game. He went 2 for 5. Every hitter on Boston had a hit. I would say 6 of them. Yeah, 6 of them had 2 hits, and I mean, they just were incredible. It was a good game for Boston to bounce back. Maybe the 7th inning was the turnaround that Boston needed, and maybe they're able to get back into the series and take this one. But Cincinnati's still at home, and 1 game doesn't change the series. They still have a 2-1 lead. All right, here we go. I'm going to enter into Game 3 of the National League first round series between the number 3 St. Louis Cardinals and the number 6 Philadelphia Phillies. This has been a fun series so far. In the first game, St. Louis won in extra innings in a instant classic. It was a great game. And then I played it. You guys didn't get to see the actual live feed of it, but in game 2, which we covered earlier in the episode, Philadelphia jumped up early. St. Louis came smoking back, had a chance at the end with the score 5-4, runners on first and third. John McGraw, their best hitter, Hall of Famer, is at bat, the leadoff man, and he gets struck out by Chick Frazier in a great game. So both games come down to the very end. 9th inning is like, hey, what's going to happen? So really looking forward to this one. So let's see who the starters are. All right, and our starters for St. Louis Cardinals. The number 3 seed, we have Willie Sudhoff, the right-hander. During the regular season, he went 10-12. Not probably the best record you'd want for a playoff starter, but he did have 3 saves. He had a very respectable 3.55 ERA. He started 20 games. He struck out 34 while walking 39. He has made an appearance so far in the playoffs. He has not earned a decision, has not given up a run. He did pitch 3 innings, allowing 5 hits, walking 1 while striking out 1. Red Donahue, he was 12-12 during our 1900 replay. He had 4 saves. He had a 3.33 ERA. He started 21 games, struck out 38, walked 58. So you can kind of look at their regular season records, stats, very similar. During the postseason, Red Donahue has played in both games. He pitched a third of an inning in game 1 and gave up the deciding run that was unearned. So he did get credited for the loss, and then he pitched an inning and 2/3 in the last game. So he has a total of 2 innings pitched. He's only given up 3 hits. He hasn't walked any, hasn't struck out any. Got the unfortunate decision in that extra inning game of game 1 when the Cardinals won 10-6. He just happened to be the guy on the mound that gave up that initial run to give St. Louis the lead. But I wouldn't say we have dominant pitchers. We have good pitchers. So I'm not sure who you can give this one to. We are playing at National League Park in Philadelphia. It's a dark night, and it's a bad night, so it must be cold and windy. So we'll see how it all plays out and check back in. All right, so Game 3 just concluded, and the big takeaway is that defense wins championships. Apparently, that's what they say. And apparently, a lack of defense can allow you to suck. Philadelphia did jump up to a quick early lead in the bottom of the second, but unfortunately, their starting pitcher Red Donahue had gotten injured. They brought in Chick Frazier. Chick Frazier ended up pitching, in my opinion, not bad, but he ended up giving up 6 runs during the middle. He gave up 1 in the top of the 4th and then 4 in the top of the 5th. He had given 1 in the top of the 3rd as well. But out of those 6 runs that he had given up, only 1 of them was actually earned, as Philadelphia made 5 errors during that section of the game. It just got ugly. Going into the 9th inning, St. Louis was up like 9-1. They added another run in the 7th, a couple more runs in the 9th. But Philadelphia made a little bit of a dent by getting 2 runs in the bottom of the 9th. But at the end of the day, it was 9-3. The big story really was the defense was horrible for Philadelphia, and their heart of their lineup, Ed Delahanty, Nap Lajoie, and Elmer Fleck, who was their really their 3 Hall of Famers who carry their team on offense. They combined went 2 for 13. That's not going to help you in the playoffs against a team like St. Louis, who's the number 3 seed. That game's over. St. Louis now has a lead in the series, 2-1, allowing them to be able to at least be able to go back home for the playoffs. Something obviously you want. But now let's go to our last game of the episode. All right, another great series, probably just as equal as the last one between St. Louis and Philadelphia, is Pittsburgh and Chicago. This is Game 3. They split the 2 games in Pittsburgh. In the first game, Pittsburgh ended up losing to Chicago. Pittsburgh came back in the 8th inning to tie the game, send in extra innings. Chicago got 4 runs in the 10th. Pittsburgh got 2, had the bases loaded, and then on a strikeout, the game ended with 3 guys still on base. So a great game there, instant classic. And then the last one, Chicago was up 4-1, and Pittsburgh came back scoring 4 runs in the 5th to win the game. So who knows what's going to happen in this one. This is the series that I'm probably, from the beginning, have been most excited about. I think Pirates did not perform as well. I think they have an amazing team. Originally, they had come in 2nd place, but in our replay, they came in 4th. They struggled early. So Chicago, though, you can't sleep on them. They've obviously shown why. They were only 1 seed below Pittsburgh. Came down to the very end. Who was going to be the 4 seed? Who was going to be the 5 seed? Pittsburgh ended up getting it. So this is going to be a fun game. I really hope it will be, because I'm really enjoying this series as well. All right, and the starting pitchers today will be 2 guys who have actually not played in the postseason yet. For Pittsburgh, we got right-hander Sam Lever. He was 14-16, not the best record whenever you have a losing record, but he did get 14 wins. He had 0 saves. He had a very respectful 3.57 ERA. He started 35 games. He he struck out 54 and walked 58. For the Chicago Orphans, they're going to bring up the right-hander Jack Taylor. He had a very even 11-11 record. He had 0 saves. He had an okay 4.07 ERA. He started 30 games, struck out 49, walked 53. You see, they started a similar amount of games. Both of them were about 500. They had, close to each other ERAs, and their strikeout to walk ratio is pretty much the same. So the pitchers look pretty well balanced. I'll probably give the edge to Sam Lever with his 3.57 ERA. Is a half a run better than Jack Taylor's. But Jack Taylor is at home, so that could help him as well. So let's go ahead. Let's play the game, and I'll let you know what happens. Well, this was the last game of the day, Game 3 between Pirates and the Orphans, and there were no major fireworks in this one like had happened in the previous games between Pittsburgh and Chicago. In this one, Pittsburgh jumped up early, got 2 runs in the first. They got a run in the second, using the hit and run, ironically, which I appreciate from the year 1900, that's how they got a lot of their runners in scoring positions. But then they just pretty much dominated the rest of the way. It really wasn't anything other than great pitching by Sam Lever. He went 9 innings, allowed only 7 hits, did not walk a batter, struck out 4. Jack Taylor was not bad. He went 9 innings, he allowed 9 hits, and he didn't walk any either. He had 3 strikeouts. Pittsburgh just got the runs early. It was enough for Sam Lever. So there was no late comebacks in this one. Pittsburgh ends up winning it 3-0. And so Pittsburgh takes the lead in the series 2-1. It was a good game, a good pitching duel, but nothing like the last two between these two teams where, came down to the 9th inning and crazy stuff was happening at the end of the game. This was just plain and simple, great pitching by Sam Lever, and getting up early. But that was game 4 of the National League of the games that we were doing. So now let's just take a quick look at how everything played out after 3 games for all the teams. All right, so let's just recap the day. During the daytime in the American League, we see that Minneapolis beat the Chicago Invaders 8-5 for them to be able to get their first win in the series. And then in the other daytime game, Buffalo, the number 7 seed, upset Indianapolis 6-5. So that's what happened during the day. At night, Kansas City and Cleveland in a slugfest that Kansas City won 17-12, even though Kansas City pretty much ran away with it, and Cleveland got some runs late that really didn't do anything. But Kansas City won, and then Detroit ended up beating Milwaukee 8-5. 3 teams that were home won, yay me, because I rock. And then in the other game, Detroit, the away team, they won, boo on me. So that's kind of where the games actually were, daytime, nighttime, what the scores were. Let's take a look at the series as in a whole in the bracket. So looking at the top half of the bracket, you'll see that the lower seed, or the better seed, hopefully I'm saying that right when lower and higher, Minneapolis won to get the series a little bit closer. So Chicago still leads, though, 2-1. Detroit in the 4-5 matchup, Detroit won, so they lead the series 2-1. On the bottom half of the bracket, we see the higher seed, or the worst seed, leading the series. Kansas City, the number 6 seed, is leading now with their victory over Cleveland 2-1, and Buffalo continues to be the shock of the American League, as number 7 Buffalo won their game 6-5. So now they lead the series over the number 2 Indianapolis Hoosiers. Let's check out the National League. We'll see during the daytime that Brooklyn won 8-7 over the New York Giants, and Boston won over Cincinnati 11-3 in probably the biggest blowout of the day. At nighttime, we see St. Louis. They won 9-3 over Philadelphia. And Pittsburgh won 3-0 over the Chicago Orphans. So in the American League, I did good, winning 3 out of 4. In the National League, I was complete doo-doo and did not win a single game. So I suck as a manager in the National League, apparently, at least in game 3s. So that's kind of how the games looked. Let's look at the bracket real quick. And here's the bracket. So Brooklyn, the number 1 seed in the National League, is the only team that has a chance to sweep in the first round, as they won again, this time 8-7, so they lead 3-0. Pittsburgh Pirates, they won, so they broke the tie. Now they have the lead in the upper bracket. So both the lower seeds, the better seed, has the advantage there. In the lower half of the bracket, St. Louis did win 9-3, so now they lead the series over the number 6 seeded Philadelphia Phillies. And then, again, a 7 leading the series over a number 2, as Boston finally got a win to kind of get the series a little bit closer. But the next 2 games will be in Cincinnati, so Boston still has their hands full. But that's the episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Tried a little bit something different. We're going to be going into the game 4s in the next episode. Only going to be showing games that are, I guess, a team could clinch the series. So the only thing that we will show more of would be the Brooklyn, New York series, since that's the only one that could be there. Everything else would be more like this episode, a little bit of a game ticker kind of thing. But that's a wrap for this one. Hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, this is Coach Dan. Have a good one. Bye.